Yes, of course, this is going up on YouTube tomorrow. Fantastic. Everything looks good. Why is it like this in this room? What are we doing? Nope, I want to turn that off. Cool. All right. There we are. And what are we doing on time? I'm early, but that's fine. I'm basically recording this, I think pretty much. Hello, everybody. Hi. I'm a little early, I know, but that's because I'm getting organized for the rest of everything I'm going to do. I hope you're doing well. I hope your weekend was pleasant. I hope you're well and healthy and relatively sated with existence right now. I'm starting in like a minute-ish. Feel free to marvel at the new screens. An appropriate amount of oohing and ahhing is always welcome. And as I said, yes, this is going on YouTube. Depending on when we're done, either later tonight. Again, it comes down to that weird YouTube upload policy of like sometimes it takes 10 minutes and other times it takes 7 hours. So shrug, it goes up. It'll definitely be up tomorrow. But we'll see. We'll see if that process gets started tonight or if it's tomorrow's project. Thank you, by the way, for enjoying the new screens. I'm real pleased. I'm real pleased with the way things have sort of started to take shape and the control I have with things. It's very, it's a little bit, it's vastly more technical than it was, but now I actually have a chance to like do the things I want to do and not feel like lost in the software. Like I spent time. So you'll find out when I press buttons, things will happen. It will be great. So yeah, I think, where's my clock? Yeah, let's just start. Let's just go, shall we? We should just go. All right, I'm pressing the button. Here we go. Oh my God. We've changed screens. Awesome. Yeah, I know the screen has like twice as much branding. It's because it's the picture I used from Twitter because it was the best picture I had. It's fine. We're fine. We're learning as we go. We're in this together. Back to back, old chum. And we'll just get better as we go, I guess. So tonight, by the way, hi everybody. It's nice to see you. My downside, the one thing I've traded here is that I don't have a list of exactly who's here. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but I don't know how to like immediately make it accessible. And I'm not going to take time in the middle of doing this to like stop and figure it out. So I'm just going to assume there's like 1 billion of you and say hello to all of you. It's really nice to have you here. I hope if this is your first time checking this out, that you stick around. And if you're, somebody who's frequently here, it's really good to see you. Thank you for being here. I'd be lost without you. Tonight, I want to. What did I say in the notification? You wanted to learn how the book sausage gets made. I think is that on one of the tweets? Might be on one of the scheduled tweets, or it might have been on one of the posts. I don't know. But tonight, I want to sort of reveal some of the bookmaking process for stuff. Because, there's been a lot of like dumb shit going around the internet that completely, I'm not sure where people are getting the information they're getting. Because it's clear that a lot of people espousing many opinions have no... Oh my God, thank you so much for following, and the alerts work. All right, can we hang on. James? Is it James? James, hang on. Stop that music. Hang on. Awesome. All right, put the music back on. That's mostly for me. I worked all goddamn day to get those alerts working. Thank you so much for following. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to let you down. Anyway, I'm going to go back to my point. I'm really just excited. You don't understand how happy it makes me that these things fucking work. I am a one-man shop on all fronts, as we will talk about. But Oh man, fuck yeah, the alerts work, you guys. This is awesome. You've radically improved the tenor of my day. Anyway, I'm gonna go back over here because there's a ton of people, especially now on Twitter as NaNoWriMo wraps up, that have just been progressively adding more and more noise and less signal to the discourse when it comes to what exactly an editor does and why it's important and how, no, you just can't make it up yourself. And it's very, very clear to me that based on the information, and yeah, I made big air quotes, information they're distributing, they have no publishing experience. I don't know if their publishing experience amounts to, well, I've been rejected several times, but none of them have worked in the business because the stuff they are telling people as to how an editor does what they do, I'm not sure where they're getting it from. Maybe some amalgamation of, what they see editors in films or TV shows do, or a combination of what a film editor does, or a story editor, like a Hollywood kind of like script writing story editor. I don't know. But the fact fundamentally remains that I want to make sure you know exactly what a book editor does. Like, to demystify it. Because it's not magical. It's just a skill. It's a very technical skill. And for me, it's a deeply rewarding, enriching skill. But it's still a skill. It's still something I had to learn how to do over 20 years. It is not it is not this sort of real broad, like, swirly, twirly, artsy expression of, like, I know good when I see it. No, there's rules. Like, it follows a certain set of structures, and you can learn these rules, and you can, much like Neo in the Matrix, you can learn to bend them and cheat them and go around them and then download Kung Fu into your brain. You can do so much. Editors are like incredibly fundamental, and I'm not just saying this as somebody who literally is able to like afford internet and food and light and heat by being an editor. I'm telling you that flat out, all those books that you recommend to other people, oh my God, you got to read this story. It was amazing. Oh my God, you got to check this out. And all those books that get optioned into other material, like, hey, this is becoming a new streaming television show. All those things have editors. Usually more than one, and they do something to the work, usually more than once. But one of the things that gets overlooked is what exactly they do. And I'm really tired, like real tired, of people having just a lack of awareness for this stuff, because I get that it's not like the sexiest, glamorous part of writing. It's not the, I'm going to sit down and make up a world. It's never going to be as cool as that. It's going to be differently cool. It's going to be taking your idea and like a radio broadcast, removing the static. It's going to be polishing the stone that's already there until it gleams like a jewel. It's about improving, clarifying, strengthening, toning, whatever you want to call it, improving the work. That's job number one. And there are many ways to do this and many things we're going to talk about for the next 2-ish hours. And it's really, really, really clear that this needs to be talked about more, mainly so that people just stop sharing the retweets from really dumb people who say really stupid things. Like, we just don't need that. Like, they're just wrong. And it's okay that they're wrong, and the world is full of wrong people who say wrong things all the time. But there should be sort of a ballast, something against that, right? There should be, if 25 people are wrong, who's saying the right stuff? I'm just going to tell you what I do. I'm just going to explain it to you in as clear a fashion as possible. And if you have literally any questions anytime, just ask. Just jump in chat and say so. And I will happily answer whatever question you have. We will talk. So here are the things I want to cover. I want to make the distinction between the differences in traditional editing and self-publishing editing. I want to talk about money and why things cost the way they do. I want to talk about how editing can lead to or lead away from rejection. I want to talk about the traditional publishing bias towards not getting your stuff edited up front. And I want to talk about the self-publishing requirement that is editing. And then a whole other pile of stuff. But those are my biggies. Those are my things I definitely want to hit. So if you are, if you're up for that, welcome. Because we're going to spend tonight talking about what an editor does. And if you don't know who I am, and presumably there's got to be some, I'm looking at my stuff. By the way, I did figure out where to click to like look at the list of names. I'm super pumped. Like everything's coming up Millhouse right now. Presumably 2 of those people I've never met before. So, hi, I'm John. I've been editing for half my life now. And it's really nice for you to be here. I hope I can help explain writing to you in a way that helps you feel empowered and capable so that your book can one day end up on my shelf. Because that's really what I want. That's why I do this job. Because it's not a very glamorous job. Like, nobody shouts out the editor nearly enough. It's sort of like shouting out the beat maker in your rap. But you need your editor. And you're not going to get through the stages of publishing without an editor. But it's an unsung hero job. But I do this job first and foremost because I want books on shelves. Because books and stories are amazing to me. They're life-saving to me. They're revolutionary to me. They're transformative and evolutionary to me. And the process of taking your idea and turning it into something that can later inspire or fuel someone else, I think is the greatest piece of social magic we have outside of the actual spoken language that allows us to communicate that fire is hot, water is cold, and we can eat meat. Editing is... Where do I start this? Editing, I think, gets its first bad rap in an adversarial relationship. And a lot of experts, I'm making air quotes, experts will frame editing as an adversarial relationship because they were trying to put way too much emphasis on the writer's writing. Oh my God, you're writing. Your voice is special. Your story should be untouched. Your editor should be barely a noticeable presence. And to a degree, that's true, but that still fundamentally misunderstands what it is an editor's supposed to be doing. So here, now, flat out, is what an editor does. Ready? Ready? Hang on. We'll even drop the music out. Here's what an editor does. They do whatever they can, with whatever powers and sorcery they have, to make your story better. That's it. Just make it better. What does better mean? Yes, it's subjective. If we're talking about editing it so that you put all your commas in the right place, sweet. If we're talking about editing so that you can clarify what scenes go in what order, awesome. If we're talking about how to write dialogue that sounds like people talking, fantastic. If we're talking about how to take the loose idea that you haven't really nailed down and turn it into something that is concrete and eventually manuscriptable so that it can be published, wonderful. An editor's job is to boost and boon the writer. I am editorially as much an adversary to you as, say, the partially drunk cup of coffee you keep on your desk. Not really an adversary. I'm there to help you. We can do some things to facilitate an easier relationship, but by and large, I'm here to help you. And if I'm not the best fit for you, well, then there's... I can recommend some people who might be a better fit depending on what it is you're looking for. But by and large, my goal is to help people. I'm a helper. Any editor who wants to come out here and say that's not the function of editing, by all means, feel free. I will happily tell you how wrong you are because it's not about you. It's not about being an editor and making sure you know or you flex on just how much you know, and you went to school, and you did all the homework, and you sat in the front row, and, you're the bestest. It's not about that at all. It's really about doing whatever you can to make the story better. I want to take this for a second, though, and I'm gonna split us into 2 streams of thought, I guess, because while editing does the same stuff, because it's the same editing you do for traditional publishing that you do for self-publishing. How the editor gets involved in this process differs. So I think that's where I want to start, and then I'll talk about the actual like nuts and bolts of the job. So I'm assuming that there's about a 50, if I know my usual audience right, there's about a 50-50 or a 55-45 split between traditional publishing people, or people seeking traditional publishing, and people seeking self-publishing. And that number kind of flexes, but it's fairly evenly split. So let's start with how a self-publishing editor, or an editor leaning towards self-publishing, gets involved with a manuscript. Obviously, the writer needs to write the manuscript. The question is always, well, how much should a writer write before an editor comes on board? And that's going to depend on the kind of editing we're talking about, because there are 3 kinds of editing. Also, this is a really useful thing to know if you ever want to figure out if you're talking to the right kind of editor. Copy editing, also sometimes called proof editing or proofreading, although there are slight distinctions, but it's in that same general ballpark, is all the stuff you think of when you think about your English teacher in school. It's the red pen level work. Circle the words, find the commas, move the clauses, vague pronouns, spelling inconsistencies, sentence structure to some degree, but by and large, it's all the stuff you remember from school. Commas, pronouns, antecedents, objects, passive voice, some general structural word-based stuff. A lot of editors, especially those you find sort of shopping themselves out on social media, tend to lean towards this sort of arena because, one, it requires a functional knowledge of how to do your job and does not take as much time as some of the other depths of editing, and you can do it fairly well with a minimum of experience. There are books you can get to teach you. There are, you can take an online class or two and feel pretty comfortable. In the U.S., there's no certification that the way there is in Canada or the way there is in Europe. That's because, America is America. But by and large, the certification pretty much just makes sense that everybody's on the same page. Yeah, there's a writing pun. But make sure that everybody has sort of an awareness and they go, copy editing deals with this stuff and other editing deals with that stuff. It's to homogenize things. It is my experience in 22 years that seeking the certification is not as critical as you think. Because unlike a dedicated trade skill like a plumber or an electrician, where you want to make sure they're certified, or a car mechanic, you want to make sure they know what they're doing and they've been sort of accredited by a body. There's enough flexibility in editing, especially in some of the more superficial kinds of editing, the cosmetic stuff especially, where being certified in your ability to point out commas and semicolons seems a little extraneous, seems a little extra. You don't desperately need somebody who's been, who paid $149 to get a certificate saying, oh yeah, you totally get an M-dash, bro. So don't get bogged down in the degreeness of it. The thing you're looking for, at least if I'm looking for a copy editor, how do I know if I need a copy editor? Your story is complete. You are supremely confident that it is clear. You're not worried about its nuts and bolts in terms of your character arc and your themes and your plot and your world building. And you're more just trying to make sure it's nice, neat, and pretty and polished. This is often why this level of editing is called a polish edit or a polish editor. It's because you're putting the bow on the package. So you can send it off and do whatever. Pricing for this varies. You will sometimes find some, what's the word I want to use? Because the word I want to use is probably a problem. Chuckle fucks. Let's go with that. You will probably find some chuckle fucks somewhere who will insist to you that the best thing you can do is charge fractions of a penny per word. I don't know if you've ever tried to pay your bills by figuring out fractions of pennies, but I have a real hard time trying to make an electric bill payment if your 90,000 word book is only netting me about $75. I either have to do a lot of 90,000 word books very quickly, or I better get used to sitting in the dark. Be really leery. Be really leery of the people who want to radically slash their price to under a penny per word because either they are just, dying for your work. Oh my God, I need it. Or they're hoping you just don't notice that perhaps their work doesn't have a lot of experience underneath it, or that they can get away with kind of a small invoice and you'll go, oh, I'm getting a big deal. But ultimately, you're going to get what you pay for, particularly at this level. So if you're happy at this level, great, swim in these waters. It's fantastic. Loads of people do this. It's delightful. But let's say your problem isn't that. Let's say your problem is something deeper. Let's say your problem is, you've got some problems with commas and pronouns and this, that, and the other, but you're also not so sure that things read smoothly. Your paragraphs are a little bit wonky. Things feel like, you're repeating yourself. You're not sure you're internally consistent in the story. You had a character named A, now you're naming him B. Or you've added and changed things from so many drafts. You want to kind of make sure that everything is consistent. And you want to make sure that your dialogue sounds like people. And you want to make sure that the overall flow and structure of the story works to your advantage. That it's a complete story, well told, and it's got a nice, pretty polish on it. Well, then for that, you need to go one level deeper in editing, and you want to look for a line editor. A line editor is going to do copy editing plus line editing work, which is going to help homogenize and strengthen the internal architecture of the story. They're going to start poking stuff with sticks. Does the dialogue sound like dialogue? Does it sound like something a real human being would say, or a real person if we're trying to anthropomorphize things? Are all your naming strategies consistent? If you started calling a character A and then went to B and it's supposed to be B all the way through, is it B all the way through? Are all your descriptions consistent? For the last 100 pages that we've had a 6 foot tall, basketball player. Now they're a 5'9" wrestler. Consistency, by the way, is a huge publishing issue, especially in big giant stories with big giant point of view shifts and loads of characters. Trying to get all that stuff consistent so that it makes sense, so that the reader knows what to picture. Huge deal. Will absolutely red flag and lead to rejectionville very quickly. Consistency really matters. Not just in terms of names, but also in terms of stuff like character motivation. If your character starts off wanting to own their own bookstore, and there's no reason to change that over the course of the story, if all of a sudden that goes away, you've got an unmatched motivation for your character. What happened to the want of the bookstore? It just disappeared. That's the kind of stuff that starts to get looked at in line editing. Again, you are going to pay more than 1 penny per word for this. This is a more intensive. As we get deeper into our levels, there are 3 levels. As we get deeper, you're looking at a more intensive and rigorous practice. And it's going to lead to an editor asking you, the writer, more questions. Not just, hey, what word are you trying to say here? But more like, this sentence doesn't make sense. What are you trying to communicate to the reader? What should the reader picture in their brain when they read this paragraph? To whom does this pronoun refer? Stuff like that. What happened to the fireworks factory? But let's suppose you don't necessarily want that. Let's suppose you're pretty sure this thing's a mess, that you want to do the best job possible, that you're willing to admit bravely, courageously, happily, you don't know nearly as much as you think you need to. You're way in over your head. You've been looking at this thing so long, you're ready to beat your head against the wall. You just want some help. Things feel like a mess. You've written 1 million drafts. You've been rejected 1 billion times. You're tired of this whole process. You just want somebody to make sense of everything, and you want to not spin your wheels. Welcome to the deepest depths of editing. Welcome to the space I live in. Developmental editing. Developmental editing, also called substantive editing, substantial editing, thorough editing, although that's a misleading term. The deepest level of editing. You will most definitely pay several pennies per word for this. Takes the story apart. Not only in terms of hey, here's a comma, here's a pronoun, grammar, structure, red pen, copy level, not just the interrogate the middle depth of line editing, but one step further into how did you make this character? What's your plot? What's your world building like? Not just where is it on the page, but what decisions did you make and why did you make them? What do you think your themes are and where did you put them? Why is this chapter in the order that it's in? Why is this conversation happening here and not over there? It will, if given enough time and space, take apart the whole book word by word, page by page, chapter by chapter to put together either through deletion or omission or construction or reconstruction. We'll talk about those things. To build the best book possible. It is the most thorough thing you can do to a story. Consider it a rewrite or a potential rewrite that covers a multitude of other stuff. You will, from a good developmental editor, you will be made into a better writer. A good copy editor will make your book good. A good line editor will get you thinking and make a better book. A good developmental editor makes a better author, so that book upon book upon book upon book, you consistently improve. Developmental editing is playing the long game. We're playing for careers here, not just single books. And whether you measure your career in single book, one book, or series or multiple series or who knows what, developmental editing is the deep way to go. It builds long-term relationships designed to make you a better writer. And that's going to be true whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing. However, self-publishing is better geared for that because I don't know if you know this, but the ease with which someone can upload a book to a major publishing website, click the publish button, and then claim to be a published author is pretty staggeringly simple. And for a lot of people, the want of that recognition, the want of that title, the want of that praise, oh my God, you're published, yay, will lead them to shortcut as much as possible the stuff that would allow them to get there better, more consistently, with better results. People are willing to cut through a lot of the effort to get to the reward because they've spent so long thinking about the reward and kind of ignoring the effort. By and large, for the most part, you're going to run into a lot of copy editing, proofreading, that kind of stuff, and developmental editing. Line editing is still around, but a lot of line editors are, I guess I should say this way, a lot of copy editors happen to verge into line editing space because it's pretty common, especially when you get a really good copy editor. Likewise, developmental editing can step out of its depths if the story's in pretty good shape to just move into line editing. It's sort of the overlap in the Venn diagram, if it's easier to picture as two things with an overlap. Self-publishing authors need editors. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care how many times you've drafted a book. I don't care if you've published like 1 million books before. An editor will make a difference. If only because it can deliver or help you deliver a better product that will lead to better reviews, which will lead to better algorithmic presence, which will lead ideally to better sales. And I have never met a self-publishing author who wasn't interested in better sales. Even if you don't want to look at this in terms of someone's going to come correct my words, someone is going to talk about what I'm writing. Even if you don't want to go down that avenue, which honestly you should always go down that avenue, but just look at it from a sales perspective. You're trying to make as many sales as possible and make as much money as possible, right? Why wouldn't you avail yourself of every tool possible to do that? If this were a brick and mortar business, right? If we were putting together, I don't know, a bakery or a butchery or I don't know, a bar or something, wouldn't you want the best equipment possible to service the maximum number of clients or patrons? Wouldn't you want comfortable chairs? Wouldn't you want a working soda fountain? Wouldn't you want shelves in the best quality material so it doesn't look like, we're hanging out in somebody's sketchy garage? Or is it just more important for you to say, oh, I have this restaurant. It just happens to be the garage of my, 95-year-old neighbor who never goes outside and notices all the people. Put together the best product you can using whatever the best tools you can, and you will get better results than if you just race towards the end. That to me has always seemed really clear. And I don't quite know why people stumble on that part. If I had to guess, it's because it's the major distinction between self-publishing authors and traditional publishing authors. It's either going to be, I don't want to put in that much extra work, or I don't really want to have to do these extra steps. I just want the end result, which fundamentally reveals a lack of knowledge in both those arenas. Once you go self-publishing, you are the publisher, you are the author, you are both sides of the equation. Getting an editor is exactly what happens in traditional publishing, except the publisher pays for it. So, from a self-publishing standpoint, an editor comes on board when the writer/publisher steps up and goes, hey, I need somebody to edit this book so that I can sell it, so I can, buy lunch. Well, that's where that process starts. Whether the writer goes out and goes, hey, I'm an author who wants to self-publish my stuff. I want to be a better writer so I can produce a better career. Jump on board with an editor. Whether it's I'm publishing my book, the book's done, I need somebody to come and get all the ducks in a row. Fine, whatever. That's how self-publishing kicks off with this thing. Let's talk about where traditional publishing comes on board with it. For this, of course, I'm going to assume that the writer has written a book, and either the writer has engaged a pimp, an agent, to represent, air quotes, their best interest, also air quotes, and they've sort of shopped it around to publishers, or they've gone direct to publishers who accept unagented or unsolicited submissions. Either way, the decision gets made to, hey, yeah, we're gonna take this book on. The publisher, makes whatever arrangements with your pimp or directly with the writer and their lawyer, makes the arrangements for the contract, lays things out, and then the publisher turns around and says, okay, the way this book is on day one, on day of receipt, is not going to be the way this book goes out the door. That's just not how that happens. Things will be changed. They might be minor things. They might be minor things like, hey, we're going to fix all the commas. Or, yeah, that semicolon, that's not how the semicolon works. Or it might be something significant like, hey, we're going to change the title. Or we're going to cut a major subplot. Part of that, I've seen it described as an intrusion. Part of that intrusion on the work by the publisher is not a personal decision to tell the writer that they suck. It has nothing to do with you personally. It has everything to do with the end goal of what can we do to produce the most publishable, best-selling book we can. Sometimes that means it's just going to be a spate of corrections. Fix this, trim this, chop this out, put a quotation mark here that it forgot, put a space here, et cetera, et cetera. And other times it's going to be something more rigorous, like this book is 10,000 words too big. We better break out the sharp scalpels and get cutting. Or it might be that, hey, we're missing 10,000 words. Have the writer fix this. Tell them to fix the following things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever it might be. Either way, the editor is there to serve the publisher. The difference from self-publishing is that when the editor is there to serve the self-publishing author, that editor in the self-pub world can straddle the line between hey, let me help you write this better. Let me explain to you what's going on versus let me do this from a business perspective. And the lines, the division lines for traditional publishing are still way, way too entrenched in a number of isms and phobias and shit. So it becomes quite difficult to affect major change at a rate people would be comfortable with. But all the same, it still comes down to the editor's there to do what the publisher wants. Depending on how long your editor's been editing, depending on their pedigree, depending on their experience and what they're bringing to the table, the editor has some flex and some ability to, turn down a publisher's demand for, hey, I need you to cut 10,000 words out. Hey, I think we can cut 6,000 words out and shape the story like this and shape the story like that. Those decisions are made in meetings that generally do not include the author. Why don't they include the author? Because the author gave the book to the publisher. That's what the contract does. They're renting the book from you. They're going to pay you back with the advance. They're going to pay you back with royalties. But that's the publisher's book. Your name's on it, sure. But they're facilitating its transit towards customers. That's a really important point. I don't have to, if publisher X comes to me and goes, hey, help me with my new submissions, I am not obligated, and often I am told not to go seek out the 12 authors in question and go like, hey, what's up with your book? Sometimes it's just, what's the most effective way to churn this stuff out and get it out, because I need it done by this date and I want it on the shelf this way and it's got to set this up. That's the job. And I don't necessarily need to go back to an author and go, hey, I took out Aunt Doris. I might, me personally, I will tell you, hey, I had to cut Aunt Doris. Here's why. And then you can go take up that fight if you want to fight and die on that hill. Side note, never die on a hill for Aunt Doris. But if you want to try, I ain't going to stop you. Go for it. Do whatever you got to do, man. The fact remains, though, the point of this is traditional editing is there to service the product. How do I sell this book? How do I make this a unit of sales? And self-publishing editing, I've always felt, is aimed at how do I make a better author? How do I make a writer better so that they can have a better career no matter where they go, no matter what they write? That distinction has earned me the enmity and ire of a great many people. Through everything from politicking to social rumor to childishness to, hey, remember John when you were 20 and did dumb shit? It happens. But all the same, those are your two big divides. No matter how we get there, the work ends up in front of an editor ideally. And again, if you are clinging to this idea that you don't need an editor because you have, software or something, let me disabuse you of this notion quickly and swiftly. That software doesn't give a shit about your nuance. It tries. But you ever read like one of those memes where like, I made an AI bot watch 40 hours of this sitcom and write a script? You see that? It doesn't really do it. And yeah, I know those things are exaggerated for effect, but all the same, it's not looking at nuance. It didn't really know what you meant when you were using that there, or the who was when the who did the thing. They're not able to read a lot of subtlety because they're going to apply the rule first. That software is great and it sounds like a great deal and it's wonderful because it helps give you meaningless statistics that make you feel like you're accomplishing something. Like, do you really give a shit about your test score readability? Is that going to help you? You're going to put that on a business card? You're going to use that in your marketing? You think the reader is going to care about that? Or do you think the reader's just there because they want a book? But no, go ahead. Spend that $89 or whatever on that software. That's cool. It makes you happy, right? It makes you feel like you're doing something. Yeah, that's what they want. That's what they're aiming for. That software that doesn't read nuance, that you can't rationalize with. You can't go, hey, program, what I was trying to say is that this stained glass window is sort of like a parallel to the dream I talked about with the scintillating colors 3 chapters ago. The software isn't going to go, oh, you're right, I totally get that now. The software is going to tell you about your independent clauses all being out of whack, your punctuation being wrong, and how this is a really passive paragraph. You're creating something very subjective for a very subjective purpose, a consumer. Why wouldn't you want as much humanity, empathy, compassion, and experience in the process? Are you just cheap? Like, I hate to make it like that. I hate to make it sound like that. But a lot of these people are just going to be cheap and take the fast way out because they want the end result rather than the journey. I'll get an editor next time. You can get an editor now. One of the big stumbling points, and it comes up in the next part where we talk about what exactly the editor does, is authors have a lot of fear, like a lot of fear. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being laughed at. They're afraid of being told that they've wasted their time. They're afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of being told that no one's going to read their shit. They're going to be afraid of, doing all this work and then getting no sales. Let me know if I'm hitting anything that perhaps you have worried about. They're afraid of things not making sense, of things being, pointless, of the sales being too low, of the money not coming in, of never getting published, of always being rejected. Oh my God, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you. I appreciate you. You are valuable. Welcome. Thank you. I hope you stick around. Tell your friends. We're here to party. Have a glass of water. Those fears play a direct effect in the text you write. Because if you're really anxious, let's say, and you're desperate to have somebody totally get, air quotes, what you're saying, you're going to pack a ton. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to stream. I'm here every Monday and Wednesday. Pack a ton of detail into your paragraphs. Because you totally want the reader to get it, right? Like, oh my God, there's this detail and this detail and this detail and this detail and that and that and that and that and that. Quantity of detail does not always necessarily lead to clarity of picture in the reader's head. It just doesn't. Because if you give me 15 details in a rapid fire succession, the reader has no choice but to assume all 15 of those details are fundamentally equivalent and that they need to keep all 15 of those details fresh in their heads the entire time. It gets pretty exhausting after a while. Also, if you're going to describe something fairly benign and immaterial to the story, like the potted plant on the desk in the side of one of the rooms that you're barely in, over-describing that plant makes it seem like that plant's a really big deal. And it's just a plant over there in the corner, but giving it that extra, the shape of the leaves and the colors and the texture and the photosynthesis and the history of the roots and all that stuff. Undue focus on things suggests writer anxiety. Likewise, the other end of the span, the other end of the range where it's, I'm not going to detail shit. I'm going to do the bare minimum because I know what I'm talking about, suggests either arrogance, you think the reader will just get it because you're super clear, or a different kind of anxiety. Oh, I don't want to mess up. I'm just going to say what it is, but I don't want to be wrong about my own description, so I'm going to skimp. Or it just seems like a lot of work. I'm not really sure how to do it and I want to do it right, so I'm going to softball. I'm going to technical term, throw a potato and just kind of lay it up there and whatever. In either case, that comes across in the writing. Every issue you have, your anxiety, your insecurity, your frustration, your aggravation, your thoughts about X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, come through in the writing because writing is a fundamentally human, personal, vulnerable, creative, emotional task. You have to accept that and roll with it rather than try to avoid it. Because when you try to sublimate it, push it down, compress it, ignore it, avoid it, just like trying to hold pudding in your hand when you squeeze your fist together, it just oozes out through your fingers. Yeah, I know, pudding. It was the clearest thing I could think of. It's not my best analogy, you guys. Come on. But you get what I'm saying? Like, you try to hold, like, something squishy in your hand, you squeeze your hand, and it just kind of oozes everywhere. It's still going to ooze out. It's still going to be there. You gotta understand that what you're doing is being vulnerable on the page. You put your guts on the page. That's where that saying comes from. You put your guts on the page, and the editor should be there to not judge those guts and go, well, you're a terrible person, but to instead look at what you're doing and go, oh, I see where you're going. Let's see if we can get you there in a smoother, better way. Again, just to facilitate your vision. Clarify the static from your broadcast. Your editor is there not to compete with you. They're not there to shout you down. Traditional publishing, way back in the day, 30, 40 years ago, longer, was very much a gatekeeping exercise. I'm the editor. I know best. Leap and dance for my amusement, writers. Ha 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 ha. Finger tent, finger tent. It has, over the last 30 years in particular, really softened as publishers have discovered things like women exist, or, you know, not white people, or people who are not straight pasty Christians. Oh my God, there's other humans on the planet. Shocking. This softening of the gatekeeping hoops make the hoops that do persist particularly annoying. By and large, editorial work is not adversarial. It's not supposed to be combative. I will, and I have, totally rolled up my sleeves and gone toe-to-toe with a client over, like, hey, this is not, I get what you're trying to say, but this is not how to say it. You can leave it alone. You don't have to take my advice, but understand that the reader is not going to click with what you're saying for whatever reason. And sometimes they do it, and sometimes they don't, because here's the next big thing. Put a gold star by this if you're writing this down. All edits are suggestions. Yes, you are paying for if you're hiring your own editor, you're paying for their expertise. You are paying for their experience. You're paying for their skill. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to you clicking accept changes or not, undoing the thing they wrote. This is also true in traditional publishing. However, traditional publishing is going to put a little extra lean on this, a little extra pressure on this. Because if you choose to push back against all their changes, they still hold the bigger cards. They can just drop you. You can't really effectively fire a publisher. You can walk away and dissolve your contract, but there's stigma attached with that, and traditional publishing is counting on that stigma for you to stay in line. There's your fun business fact for the evening. But by and large, all the edits I make, from you need to change that which to a that, or you need to take out that had, or you need a comma here, or you don't need a comma here, or anything like that, or a highlighted paragraph of what the hell is the dog doing? All that stuff is suggestive. It's me taking a guess. I mean, it's an informed guess, but still, you don't have to automatically say yes just because I'm me and you're you. Our goal here is to work together towards producing the best product. And if any editor gives you the impression that that's not their goal, you have every right and reason to go find something to better facilitate your end goal. It's fine. It happens all the time. That said, are there any questions so far? From this point forward, I want to move into the actual nuts and bolts. What I do, how I do it, that kind of thing. Questions so far? I hope everyone is doing well. The stream seems to be working awesomely by all accounts. Everything is ticking along nicely. I see people I know. I see some people I don't know. It's really nice to have all of you. Thank you for being here. You guys are peaches and cream. I hope you're good. I'm going to get a mouthful of tea. And then very kindly remind you that on Wednesday night, so 2 days from now, the writer's chat this week features a couple questions about publishing and how to deal with that. So there's a question: when a publisher gives edits and changes, are they willing to meet you in the middle, or is it more of their way or the highway? That's a great question. So on one hand, it's going to come down to who the particular publisher is, because some publishers are less flexible than others, just by nature of the guy, or usually it's a dude, the nature of the person in charge, or the deadline they're up against, or any number of factors. Some can be very inflexible. For the most part, they're aware, publishers are aware, let's put it this way, publishers are aware that they need the book, and that on one hand, you have them at a disadvantage, because you can always say, I'm not giving you this book, I'm out. So they're willing to some degree to meet you in the middle, but a lot of people will feel like, or make you feel like, it is pulling teeth to meet in that middle. It has been my experience in 22 years that the vast majority of bigger publishers are begrudgingly okay, I guess if you have to meet you in the middle. And the smaller publishers are, especially because they're smaller or newer, are more willing to meet you in the middle, but it's going to be a middle of their choosing. Yeah, they'll listen to you, they'll totally hear you, but at the same time, like, they're gonna skew that middle a little bit more towards what they want, because their idea isn't so much about a functional story so much as it is about a functional sellable product. Some of those changes, while they might just be, like, we're taking this scene out, it's extra, or we're adding this comma or something like that, you've got to remember that from a publisher standpoint, changes affect the marketability of a thing. If we hack out the scene where the dragon attacks in the first chapter and we shuffle that down until later in the book, or we take it out entirely, it's because its removal or its absence gives us a book that we think, publisher-wise, we can market in an effective way based on how we market this. We have trouble historically marketing dragon stories, so if we yank the dragon out of this, we can market it in a different way. There is an agenda to the majority of publisher decisions. It's either going to be a financial agenda, what's going to save us the most amount of money, or what's going to make us the most amount of money, or it's a productive one. We got to get this book out the door like yesterday. We got to do what we got to do. If that means meeting them in the middle and sort of grinning and bearing, then we grin and bear. You will encounter, though, publishers who are like, nope, we made some changes. Your check gets delivered on XYZ date. It is regrettably one of the not nice parts of this business. It is not as common as it used to be, thankfully, but all the same, yeah, you can get them to meet you in the middle. Good question. Really good question. Totally one worth asking, because a lot of writers, when I start mentioning how a publisher can change a title, they flip out. Oh my God, they can do that? Yeah, they can do whatever. They can shelf your book. It's theirs. You gave it to them. You signed paperwork. Great question. Thank you for asking it. Other questions before we get into the nuts and bolts of things? It would be great if I could, again, this is not a you worry thing, this is a me thing. If I could click this button and get this list to show up in this side of the screen so that I can move my head and still talk to you guys. Anyway, that's just a John concern. I'll figure that out for Wednesday. Anyway. Shall we move on? You want to talk about what I do and how I do it? So, here's a fun fact. A lot of the ways that writers write drives editors up a wall. Absolutely drives them up a wall. For example, Scrivener and Google Docs are editorial nightmares because they're not designed to be edited in. They're designed to be written with. They're productive tools. Yeah, I understand that Google Docs has an editing and suggesting mode. First of all, suggesting mode should be the default, but its layout is not conducive to the work editors need to do. It's not much better in Microsoft Word, just to be clear, but it's the industry standard because Office is standard because it's a business thing. This is doubly so in Scrivener, which is the worst thing to work with a client humanly possible. It's great to read, but it is such a walled garden in terms of manuscript that yeah, I can do it. I have Scrivener on every machine I work with, but all the same, like it makes my job harder. And my job's already pretty like time consuming as it is. But understand that the reason why your publisher or your publishing software is looking for like a doc or a docx or some kind of written word processor format, file format, is because that editorial process is, supposed to be smoothed out. Yeah, Scrivener is awful for editing. It is, oh God, it is. So, fun fact, I can edit in Scrivener. I just color code text. One color for stuff coming in, one color for stuff coming out, and then I have to make a note on, where's my legal pad? On this legal pad as to what line or page in what chapter or section the particular comment is. That's a nightmare. Imagine a 200,000 word manuscript that I have to trim down and the number of legal pads I have to go through. Scrivener's, ugh. Yes. Love Scrivener, great. And always export to Word. Yes, that's the way to go. Always export to Word. Here are the things you can do to make any editor's life a better place. Put it in Word. Put it in 12 or 14 point font. Double space it. Do that, and you're going to make this process infinitely easier. Not just because those are the steps, the first things I do upon receipt of a manuscript, but it's going to make the process a hell of a lot easier. Now, I need to make a distinction between Old Word and New Word. So New Word, in its most recent update of a few weeks ago, has decided to, and I'm using the technical term here, really fuck up how they handle track changes and comments. And they've adopted more of a Google Docs sort of marginal column view for comments so that it sort of floats off to the side. And it's atrocious, and it requires the whole, you got to, maximize your whole screen out. And it can be a pain in the ass. That's a New Word. It's supposed to be better. It sucks ass. It has, from my experience, slowed me down like 20%, which is saying something. But we'll talk about speed shortly. Old Word, I can do everything with a right click. Right click, highlight, new comment, do what I got to do, click it, move on, next. Done, bang, zoom, simple, simple. Here's what I do once I get a Word doc, whether it's from a writer directly or a publisher or a pimp. Although, shockingly, since I started calling them pimps to their faces, I don't talk to too many of them. I wonder why that is. It's almost like when you point out the emperor has no clothes, the emperor really doesn't want to hang out with you anymore. Anyway, here's what I do. Here's how the editorial process starts. Open the Word doc. If it isn't double-spaced with a reasonable font that, one, I can see, because every once in a while, you do get somebody who's like, I'm going to put this thing in 8-point font. Well, why? Just to be that person, I guess. So you put it in a reasonable font. You double space it. And then I start reading. I only need to read the first 30 to 50 pages. I will eventually read the whole thing, but I start the first 30 to 50. Why? Because all the mistakes you're going to make across that entire book, exist within your first 30 to 50 pages. Yeah, the situational stuff might change. Like the problem you have in chapter 4 might be two different characters in the same problem in chapter 25. But the problem itself exists in those early pages. Your vague pronouns, your wobbly tenses, your strange dialogue that doesn't sound like human beings communicating with each other, this weird thing you're doing with M dashes, the amount of run-on sentences, the big giant paragraphs that say nothing, whatever. All your problems live somewhere within your first 50 pages, and you're just repeating them over the course of the manuscript. What kind of problems? Some are grammar, like vague pronouns, punctuation. Some are structural. How many paragraphs start with the same word on the same page? Sometimes it's metaphysical structural, sentence length, paragraph length. Sometimes it's narrative. What the hell is your character's arc? What's their plot? What's the world building like? What's your theme? Oh man, theme is a biggie. Sometimes it's a combination of all those things. But everything I need to know about who you are, how you write, what you're trying to do, how hard you're going to work, how hard you have worked, what your next plan is, how likely you are to succeed at that plan, etc., I can learn in your first 50 pages. It's a diagnostic effort for me. So I read the first 50 pages and I start making notes, not in Word. Again, I grab a different legal pad. It's this one. And I start making notes. I put your name on the top and I start detailing it out. Okay, person X, a lot of commas, a lot of run-on sentences, need to mix up the paragraph lengths, really need to get over themselves in terms of dialogue. Everything sounds like a soap opera. Action scenes come too slow. Chapter 1 feels mushy. Those notes mostly will eventually get turned into English and then sent over to, you, the writer, in some format. But by and large, it's for me to help orient myself. Because an editorial first pass is not usually designed to really unearth or produce new work. It's just there to help figure out the lay of the land. The vast majority, especially for copy editor or line editors, not so much developmental, but if you're dealing with the upper end of the editing range, I'm hesitant to use the word spectrum, the upper end of the editing pool, you will find that your first half of your first pass is more to sort of like figure out what's going on, and then the second half of your first pass is really where the work gets going, and that's whatever kind of work it needs. So if it's somebody reading and checking out your grammar, checking out your punctuation, starting to poke your story with a stick, whatever it might be, it's going to happen over the latter half of the back part of that first pass. When I say pass, by the way, just so that we're all clear, pass is a term an editor will use for going through the manuscript. When you hire an editor, or when a publisher retains an editor, they are paying for a certain number of passes, usually 2. Every once in a while, especially if the piece is short, it'll get a 3rd. Or if it's like minimally problematic, it's, you just have a problem with periods, or stop using parentheses, or whatever, like one single issue, easily fixable, you might get 3 passes. But by and large, you're going to get 2. One pass to really do the hard, heavy lifting. The second pass to sort of pick up anything that got missed and to clarify and make sure that the work from the first pass makes sense. And it goes like this. I read the first 50. I make my notes on this legal pad, which the cat is now sitting on. I then go through the whole book, read the whole thing. And then I go back to the beginning and I start the work. Page 1, word 1, all the way through. Comments where I need to, track changes where I need to, highlight and flag things. It is a combination of inline work, meaning, I'm going to sit there and add a word or take out a word if I need to, and a combination of questions and comments over there in the margins to describe, like, hey, what are you trying to say in the sentence? This sentence feels vague. What do you want the reader to picture? How many people are in this conversation? Questions. I, personally, am not the sort of person, not the sort of reader, not the sort of editor, not the sort of human who will sit there and write you comments to, produce vast amounts of smoke up whatever rectal cavity you want. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my God, I love this, and then give you a couple emoji. That's not what you pay me for. If you want that, I'm sure we can find some 14-year-old who's happy to provide that to you. I'm here to help your book be better. I will tell you when things are badass. Fuck yeah, that's a fucking great line. Love that shit. More like that, please. But I'm also going to tell you, what the hell's going on this first page? Why is this page? What are you trying to say here? What's this? What's going on? Why is there no... What did I write today for somebody? Why is there no challenge in any of these conflicts? What happened to the bad guy? He just sort of disappeared. Because my goal isn't to sit there and then make you feel bad about what you do. My goal isn't to sit here and go, haha, see how much you don't know about this? My goal is to get you to see, okay, here's what you're doing. Now we're going to make it better. You got the basics. Words, sentences, paragraphs, punctuation. Sweet. But now we're going to build on it. Now we're going to see, we're going to add some flair, for lack of a better word. Add some technique, add some polish, add some pizzazz. Whatever word you want to use. I had somebody refer to it once as zhuzhing up the manuscript, and that's always stuck with me. Whatever it needs to be. But it's a combination of some encouragement, some direction, some questioning, some interrogating, depending if the questioning is really, really intense, and just general highlighting all the way through the book. That's one pass. And then it goes back to the author. Again, we're looking at self-publishing rather. It goes back to the author. In traditional, it goes back to the publisher. So I guess in either case, yes, it goes back to the publisher if you really want to split hairs. But I think you understand what I'm saying. They can go back through it, make whatever changes they want, send it back, and then I will repeat the process with a second pass. That's what they pay for. That is what I am contracted to do. Sometimes an author doesn't want to see it until it's done that second pass. Go through it twice, John. Make all the notes you want to make. Hand it back to me when you're done. That happens. It happens with some of my more established clients because we know how to work together and they can just pick up the phone one day randomly 7 months later and go, okay, I'm ready. And then we move on again. But for a lot of first-time people I work with, you give me the thing, I do something to it, I hand it back, you evaluate, you start to make some changes, you bring up some questions, you hand it back to me a second time after you do whatever you do, and then I wrap the sucker up and give it to you. Now, here's the thing to know. This is really important. When I'm done that second pass, there's no guarantee that that's going to be the finished publishable. Like I can take it straight to whatever software or whatever service and immediately make it a book. I always try to get it there because I like performing at that quality. But for a lot of writers, there's still the potential of needing to rework things or refinish things or start a whole new draft because, okay, now I know what to do. Now I can go make these changes and really put the polish on it and then send it off. Editorially, I editorially do not make the broad blanket promise of, oh yeah, once I'm done with your book, you can just put it up on whatever famous river-named giant corporate website you want. I don't. I know people that do. I think it's a skeevy, kind of questionable thing to do, but people do it. My goal, though, first and foremost, is to make sure that the book is in its best shape relative to where it was, and it's aimed toward where the author has said they want to go. That's the big, broad overview. I want to get more detailed. Is everybody okay if I get more detailed? We're good? Yes? If I don't, I'm just assuming we're good. I'm going to get another mouthful of tea. Was it Monday? Yeah, it was last Monday. I was talking about stuff, and somebody was like, I took 14 pages of notes. I have been thinking about that I generated enough talking to generate 14 pages of notes. And I'm secretly wondering if this topic, because one is more technical and two, I'm vastly passionate about it, I think I could break the 14-page mark. I really think I could. Yeah, I think I could. All right, now let's really get into this. What exactly am I looking for editorially? In what order am I processing things? How does an editor do what they do, and how does that translate into publishability? Because here's another fun fact. Let's say you traditionally publish, right? You get your stuff sent up to a publisher. You're thinking you're on easy street, right? You're thinking everything's good. Your editor's going to come in, make a couple changes, and bang, zoom, you got a book in 7 months. Yeah, everything's cool, right? No, because the editor can sit there and go, yeah, I've tried everything I can do. Cut this person loose. Happens all the time. It's happened to books I wanted it to happen to. It's happened to books I thought I could save. Because the publisher they just want a product. So the editorial process can be incredibly harsh like that. And that's part of what plays into the mystery of like, well, what does an editor look for? I'm going to tell you what we're looking for. Item number 1. And I'm not doing this in priority. I'm doing this more in the order like it comes to me off the top of my head. But the first thing an editor looks for is a main character that is clearly represented, clearly consistent, has agency, and is somebody, a reader, whomever their ideal reader might be, their ideal reader can relate to. So let's break all that stuff down. So you have a main character. They are consistently the main character in this story, unless they die or something. But by and large, for the most part, your main character, whether it's in first person and they're narrating or third person and the reader's just following them, your main character is your main character is your main character is your main character. 2, they have agency. Agency is the ability for a character to make decisions and bear the consequences of those decisions. They do shit in their book. They're the one who decides, oh, I have to go fight the dragon. Oh my God, I'm the only one who can save the day. I have to do what's right. I have to make the tough call. They decide that. They're not waiting around passively waiting for other characters to say, hey, Steve, do you want to go like do stuff? No, because they're motivated by, and now we're really going to split hairs, because now we're going to get into the developmental side, because they're motivated by a moral code, skills, fears, wants, and goals. That character is motivated to take action within their own story, and there are frequent instances in that story of a character doing those things. And this leads that character on an arc, a character arc. And when it's a main character, it's called a main character arc or a primary arc, which is the idea that from the beginning of the book, the character undergoes some kind of transformation, positive or negative, and ends up as a different sort of being by the end of the book. If you don't do that, if you fuck that up, it's a real big red flag. It is enough to sink a possible submission. It is enough to lead to massive rewrites. It is enough to lead to a publisher either shelving your book and just saying, one day it'll come out, and then delaying paying you, or cutting you from a deal. Because what are they going to market around if you don't have a main goddamn character? The relationship between reader and main character, especially in some genre like fantasy or science fiction or romance, if you can't relate your main character to your reader, it doesn't matter what cool CGI shit you write about. Without that relationship, the reader is going to feel like you are either bludgeoning them to death with the story, or they have to sit there crisscross applesauce on their carpet square during story hour while the story is told at them. Character is every fucking thing. We're going to put that on a t-shirt one day. Character is every fucking thing. So, editorially, I'm looking for that in my first 50 pages. I'm looking for that across the whole draft. Who's the character? What do they want? What's their arc? How smoothly do we progress along that arc? Does the climax of that arc coincide with the climax of the plot? We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that's an important point. Do we have sort of a synchronicity between our progressions so that way the story feels cohesive? Or is everything all happening all the fuck over the place because it seems like we're in a tumble dryer for your story? And if you're sitting there going, but John, I have multiple points of view. Uh-huh. Let's just talk about multiple point of view for a second. First of all, there's nothing wrong with it. But when you are following character number 1, we are sticking with 1 all the way. And then when we move to 2, we're sticking with 2 all the way, as though we could tear out each of these individual POVs and make them essentially some version of their own book. It just so happens that in your story, all these things are laid next to each other. Does that make sense? That's a real big thing. It's MPOV does not necessarily make you like genius level writer. It does not mean like, oh shit, they're way more talented. It can generally just be a tool to best tell your story. I think it's next Monday. The stream is all about, hang on. You know what? I'm going to show you the graphic. Let's try something on the fly, shall we? I'm going to show you a graphic. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's give it a shot. Sorry, I know I'm just doing this somewhat on the fly because, I'm so super organized, you guys. I really wasn't expecting... Yeah, next week. Next Monday is episode 3 of How Do I Write This, covering multiple B-plots, multiple point of views, and multiple arcs. That's next Monday. There's your teaser. Anyway, so whether we have one main character or multiple concurrent main characters, we are following that main character, and there's agency and development and an arc all the way through. Beyond that, because that's just the first part of the things I'm looking at, beyond that, click over there, John. Beyond that, I'm looking for plot. What's plot? Plot is conflict. Particularly main plot, which is the conflict that has the most encompassing amount of stuff that pertains to the most amount of characters or highest stakes or is the biggest deal in the book. And that main plot needs to extend across the majority of the book, starting from the end of Act 1 all the way through climax, through resolution. It's not a plot that's just sort of like there for 10 pages and then goes away. It's not a plot that shows up in 10 pages, skips 100 pages, and then shows back up. It is consistently a problem. It might undergo permutation. It might evolve, like figuring out who the killer is, and the killer keeps striking. Eventually, we figure out who the killer is, confront them, and resolve things. But I'm looking for plot. And that plot better be something that the main character can do something about. They better be able to apply their skills. They better be able to develop that plot through a series of challenges and opportunities and developments as a result, consequences. If I look for clues, if the detective is looking for clues, does the detective find clues and do those clues deepen and further the story? If we have to go in search of the magic thingamajig box, does the search for the magic thingamajig box take us through more than just like, oh, there it is over there in the corner? Do we have to travel for it? Do we have to make some effort for it? Do we have to worry about Sean Bean dying for it? Like, what are we doing here? I'm looking for plot, and I'm looking for plot. Nope. Stop it. I'm looking for plot in two ways. Thank you, Linus. I know you didn't mean to hit the thing, but thanks, buddy. I'm looking for plot with two ways. One, I'm looking for what's called plot consistency. Plot consistency is the idea that what you say the plot is in the beginning is what you say the plot is later on. So if, for instance, our plot is we have to defeat Dracula, we don't go 200 pages fighting Dracula and then all of a sudden discover, oh shit, the mummy was the problem this entire time. We don't want to feel, readers especially, editors somewhat so, don't want to feel like we got bait and switched. It's not a, oh my God, it's not one of these. Hang on. It's not like the mummy was the problem the whole time. It's not that. That's not clever. That's obnoxious shit. What you want to do if you're trying to delay the reveal of the mummy is set it up so that we are not overly focused on the red herring. We're not overly focused on the vampire. So that when we get to the reveal of the mummy, it has all the potential for contrast, for conflict, for tension, for a difference from the status quo than we had before. So when I'm looking for plot, I'm looking for consistency. The next thing I'm looking for is challenge. This is a very, very, very common stumbling point in self-publishing. Because people really want to write badass characters. Superpowered, amazing people doing superpowered, amazing shit. Where they very seldom fail. Let me tell you this, and let me be really clear about this. A reader isn't going to suddenly walk away just because your character fails at a thing. A reader doesn't only want perfect characters. Perfect characters are boring as shit. Look, let's just have a moment, you and me, okay? I have dated people who swore up and down they were perfect. It was incredibly irritating and very difficult to have a good time. Why on earth do you think a reader would want to use their free time to deal with someone like that? Perfect characters are boring as shit. We want some imperfections. We want some struggle. We want some effort. Because the reader wants there to be a sense of growth and progress. Because we want to have that moment where it's like, fuck yeah, we're defeating the bad guy. We're finally ready. We can finally do the crane kick and kick the blonde kid in the face. Oh shit, we're going to do it now. Because we want to go on that journey with the character. So our challenges across the plot have to escalate. They have to increase. As things get bigger and bigger and we get driven closer and closer to the climax, we're going to talk about the climax in a second, closer and closer to the climax, it gets harder and harder because we're building to the inevitable climax. And now, the climax. It's the highest point of tension in the story, the highest point of fill in the blank in the story. We have the most amount of risk, the most amount of danger, the most amount of tension, the most amount of hard effort required, the most amount of goal, the most amount of urgency, the most amount of fill in the blank with whatever the hell you want. It's the peak of our story structure. And if you're looking at 5-act structure, then you have 2 of these, but they're still the highest point, but they're going to be smaller than if it were one single one in 3 acts. I'm looking for that editorially. Because if your climax is tepid, and I don't realize it's a climax, how am I supposed to tell somebody to read this book and check it out? It would just kind of be like, yeah, stuff happens. Yeah, you know, like, they do stuff. That's not a very compelling marketing pitch, right? That's not going to really encourage me to, like, promote your stuff or think you're really tying things together. It just sort of dribbles out. Yeah, we don't want a climax that's just kind of milquetoast, right? We want a climax that engages, challenges, because, again, going back to character, the reader wants that relationship. They want to grow and move along and feel like the character is actually in danger when they're actually in danger, and celebrate the successes and commiserate in the sadnesses and feel like they know this person. Plot and climax are two of the ways we really get a sense of who your character is, because it's the thing they're doing in the book. It's not the only part of the thing I'm looking at editorially, because here comes the third part of our story triangle. Here's the third pillar in what an editor is looking for: world building. I don't know how many right now, how many like fantasy authors are currently checking this out. I don't know. I wish I did. If you're a fantasy author, please know that I'm particularly about to talk to you directly. Ready? I'm going to get right up here on the mic. Don't go overboard with the lore and world building. It's really nice that you have masturbated your way into 400,000 extra words of a complicated prologue and an amazing backstory that lives in vivid technicolor in your brain. It's wonderful that you've done that. Good for you. I'm very happy for you. But if you can't translate that into something relevant to a plot and a character, why would you expect a reader to ever care as much as you do when they're coming into this exchange totally unknown? Novellas. All right, well, one day we will argue about novella and lore dump, because you still get them. They're just never going to be as big. But that's a different thing for a different day, Troy. One day. Maybe I should do a short stream just because it's novellas and short stories. That sounds like some shit I would do. That would make me laugh. Like I could do a flash fiction stream that's only like 3 minutes long. Yeah, that sounds like some shit I would do. That would amuse me. I would giggle. Oh man, I'd giggle for at least 5 minutes when I was done. Yeah, that does sound like some shit I would do. Yeah, that's great fun. I'm giggling just thinking about it. Okay, back to this though. Don't go crazy on your lore dumps. Don't go crazy in your big world building. Yeah, you're going to need some. You're totally going to need some. But by and large, I only got this one book in front of me. The reader only has this one book in front of them. You don't have to lay the groundwork for book 5 right now. We don't even know if book 5 is going to happen. We're going to talk about that in a second. We don't even know what's going to happen in the future, so just give me this one book. Right here, right now, what does the reader need? Not just the immediate world building of like where this scene takes place, but the bigger, greater picture, the context of this scene in and amongst the scenes of this manuscript. Give me that stuff. Because that's what I'm looking for in this book. Because what if I, the reader, even if you write books 2 through 45, what if I never buy them? Why have you made your vision dependent on me dropping money for more books? What that's going to express, by the way, is the insistence of, oh my God, you have to read the whole series in order to understand everything. All that reveals is that you didn't figure out how to individually portion material per one book. It's a giant editorial red flag. And I see it so frequently with authors who are like, I've got a 4-book series planned. Ugh. Imagine the face I just made making this sound. Ugh. Because if you can't divorce each individual book from its constituent pieces, then you are left with an incomplete book. Each book should stand alone by itself. How do I feel about dumping lore in an appendix? I just answered last Wednesday night. I answered a question about an appendix. There are pluses and minuses to an appendix. One, they can be skipped, and a lot of readers will skip them. From a publishing standpoint, it's going to scream really, really like self-absorbed, like, oh my God, look at this dork with their appendix. And that can be it turns into look how many more pages this book is. Look how much more ink we have to do. Look how bigger this book's going to be. Think about how much heavier this book's going to be. It's going to, be heavier to ship. It's going to cost us more money. Do we really need an appendix? that is legit the discussion they have, I've had it a bajillion times. Me personally, I skip appendices unless there's something particular. Like there's a really engaging premise or I need a real reason to dive into it. Because there should be enough context clues from the text itself that I can either make up the Clone Wars in my head or I can, not have to worry about how Ian McKellen is like an angel or something. This stuff comes up, especially in science fiction fantasy, because I think every writer on some level wants that validation. They want that recognition of like, look how hard I worked on this stuff, which is legit. And you totally did. And you should absolutely get that recognition. But to kind of weaponize it in such a way to make it critical for your book, I think is a double-edged sword. So I'm not terribly an appendix guy. Even when I work in role-playing games, I try not to like do appendices anymore. But sometimes they happen, and sometimes they can be a great resource, especially if you have a lot of stuff going on purpose, or you want to like poke fun at stuff, like if you're writing like a real satirical piece, or you are playing with the form in some way, shape, or form. They can be helpful, but by and large, I am not an appendix person, Troy. Good question, though. So I'm looking for my world building. Like I'm looking for my plot. I'm looking for character. I'm doing this word by word, sentence by sentence, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, scene by scene, chapter by chapter. But I'm not done yet. I'm looking for more. I told you developmental editing is the most thorough kind of editing you can get. Because I'm also looking at a scene by scene by scene level. How are scenes constructed? In every scene, I don't care what kind of scene it is. In every scene, I'm looking for the following things. 1, the scene has to involve a point of view character. Otherwise, what the shit is it doing in my book? 2, that scene has to have a goal. Somebody has to be trying to do something, accomplish something. That goal can be simple, can be made difficult by the intrusion of others, but there's got to be somebody trying to do something. Even if it's just have a conversation or walk from one side of the room to the other or fight the bad guy or punch the dog in the face or whatever. Attack grandma. Sure, whatever. Somebody's trying to do something in a scene. And they are motivated to do that for reasons, either reasons that came from a previous scene or reasons that develop in that scene. And their attempts to do whatever it is they're doing in that scene use the skills that character has. It doesn't just come out of left field that, oh, I guess you can just breathe fire now. It makes sense for the character to be doing whatever they're doing to accomplish the goal they have in the scene. That scene should also be a place that is described. I should know what to picture in my head. Because, here we go, clients, every sentence is a camera. A reader is trying to put a movie in their mental brain theater. And we do it one sentence at a time. Every sentence is either adding new information that we have to visualize and picture, or it's expanding on existing information that we have to have already visualized or pictured to some degree. So every sentence moves that camera, focuses on a thing, establishes an angle at a thing, drifts, moves, tilts, rise, lows, pans, whatever. All to get this movie across to us. So that scene dressing, it doesn't just stop at like, and now we're in the deli. No, we've got counters and floor space and machines and lights and coolers and fridges and meat and cheese and this and that and the other. You've given it some sense that the reader and character are in the same space. If it's in first person, then much like an overlapping Venn diagram, the character and the reader are half in and half out of each other, occupying that space. And if it's third person, we'll start with the character. The character is in somewhere, and the reader is parked somewhere maybe floating over the ceiling or off to the side or floating intangibly somewhere in space and able to view the scene. I'm looking for this in every scene. Every scene. All of them for the entire book. But I'm not done yet. There's more. When characters talk to each other, the reader should be able to hear that, hear, air quotes, in their head. They should be able to, let's not be ableist, they should be able to interpret that dialogue as communication from one character to the next. Which means each character needs to sound, air quotes, distinct from each other. That if this was a TV show or a film, it would be covered by two different actors. That they each have a different cadence, that they each have a different tone of voice. That they're two different people saying the things they're saying, whatever it is they're saying. Make sense? That now some people have taken that idea and decided to make it sound like real people by completely stepping out of, let's say, chronology or anachronistically crafting language. Some people get real precious about that. They clutch their pearls and panic. Oh my God, you're using contractions. Or, oh my God, somebody, said a thing that wasn't a phrase in the time period of the story. It is not, for me, unless you've grossly, very clearly invented a thing. No one in Middle English is suddenly checking out, an emoji. No one's lolling in Middle English. No one is, dropping the clown emoji or an eggplant or something. They're saying more words. Short of that, it's not for me to legislate for you or against you in terms of are you sure this word is period appropriate? Because my goal is to create and facilitate the reader's experience with your story. I didn't know I was contracted to do a history book. And I'm willing to chuck hyper historical reality realism right out the window if it's going to make the reader have a better time with your book. Because if the reader has a better time with your book, they're more likely to tell other people to buy that book, which helps you far more than you scoring invisible yay points by the fact of you saying, oh, well, in the 1700s, this word wasn't a word. Reader doesn't give a shit. Reader wants a story. Give them a story. Everybody will understand that you weren't, 1,000 million % hyper-historically perfect. It's going to be okay. Most of the readership won't even notice. Just do what you got to do to tell the best story you can. But that dialogue is critical because presumably you're following these characters over the course of the whole manuscript. So anything possible to make that dialogue sound distinct from each other, make it clear, make it effective, make it reactive. Dialogue is not where plot lives. Because two people don't stand there and go, you know what it is I have to tell you to do? No, what is it you have to tell me to do? I have to tell you to go across that forest and go down into that canyon and fight the evil beast. I will go across the forest, go down into the evil canyon and fight the beast. You're correct. That is what I have to do. Because that is not how people communicate to one another. Dialogue is reactive. Things happen, context is created, and dialogue is a reaction to that. Holy shit, did you just see that fireball? Characters react and express emotion. It's a motive reaction through dialogue. I can't believe you just fucking said that. What the shit was that? An info dump is the exception to this rule. Back in my day when, those trees were barely more than whispers, I was out here fighting the forces of evil, and here now is my, 5-paragraph breakdown of what life was like 65 years ago. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Whatever. Info dumps are the exception, but they need to be developed and handled in a way where it doesn't feel like you just dropped a concrete block of uncomfortable, unpleasant to read and experience text. It requires some massaging. Requires a few tricks to hide the seams. But that comes down to a per sentence level. Managing your punctuation, managing your sentence length, managing your word choice. Everybody still with me? I got two more things. Two more things. Let's pull back away from some of the nuts and bolts. Let's zoom out a little bit. I'm looking for theme. What's a theme? A theme is a lesson or an idea that the reader can install in their own life. And your book is an example, like overcoming adversity, persevering in difficult situations, fighting patriarchy, not letting the jocks win in the end, trying your best, always do the right thing. Those are themes. Whatever you're writing, I don't care what genre it is, I don't care how big it is, I don't care if it's your first book, your 10th book, or whatever. Every story should have a theme. At least one. 1, 2, maybe 3. Pushing more than 3 is a lot. But definitely up to 3. And they're big deals. And they are expressed as part of the plot. They are expressed through character arc. They are expressed through both of those things at the same time to different degrees. But they are somehow made clear through the experience of the story that your story is an example of fill in the theme here. And you can point to specific items in the story, whether it's the character's arc, or this particular scene, or this event, or this action, or this something, so that the reader goes, oh yeah, that was an example of that. Cool. Theme is like a duct tape. It's going to help bind the story together more effectively so that it feels like it's suddenly more than just a list of character did this, character said that, character went here, this happened, that happened. It's going to make the story feel like it's not just being told at the reader. By the way, if you've written a thing, whatever it is, and you're having a real hard time figuring out where you put the theme, or do you have a theme? I'm going to tell you a small editorial secret. You're probably going to end up having to gut that thing like a fish and rebuild a lot of it. Inserting a theme into an already written story can be quite frustrating. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just telling you that rebuilding a story around a new theme sits at a very like spinal, vertebral sort of experience and story. So imagine like taking apart everything and then laying the theme in and then repatching everything back together. It can be a very comprehensive, frustrating, stressful, aggravating undertaking. But without a theme, you will not get published. I don't care if you go to the most lax, fly-by-night, vanity press. Theme is critical. If you self-publish without a theme, let's just nip this in the bud. If you self-publish without a theme, I guarantee you, your reviews will be mediocre at best. Because you will get feedback to say something to the effect of your story doesn't feel right. It's just kind of there. It's somewhat inert or flaccid. It's just, yeah, I read it. It's okay. I can't even imagine writing a whole book and then being told to insert a theme because there isn't one. Yes, it sucks. And I should tell you editorially, I hate to do it because I know exactly how much work it is. So when I have to tell somebody like, hey, you got to put a theme up in here, I try to write a blueprint. Here's how you're going to do it. Take this chapter, this chapter, this chapter. Make sure this event happens. Yes, a book without a theme does read like a timeline. At best case, a timeline. At worst case, it's a very big, complicated children's book. I have one more thing I'm looking for, and then I'm going to package this all up and get you out the door. Because you guys have been super patient and awesome, and I always love talking to you guys, and this has made just an improvement on my day, so thank you. But I got one more thing. Whether I'm asked to or not, I'm looking at how to sell this book. Not every writer I work with, not every client I have, not every publisher I get hired by wants me to do this, but I've been doing it long enough that I can't really turn it off. And it's the plain and simple idea that, okay, so here's the story. It's being worked on. It has this to work on and this to work on. But what are its core strengths? Oh, this premise is really awesome. Your climax is really cool. Your villain sounds interesting. Your dialogue's tight. Whatever. Every book, to some degree, has some marketable strengths. My job is to unearth them or strengthen them or both. And in worst cases, teach you how to build them. Hopefully it doesn't turn into that without us first knowing that's what we're getting into. But by and large, I'm looking for your book strengths so that I can tell you, like, okay, so if you're going to market this thing, lean here on this, talk about this, talk about this. Don't talk so much about the world building, because it's not terrible, but it's not as strong as these other 2 points. Make sure you bring up those 2 points. Here's how I would write a query letter for it. Here's how I would put the marketing blurb on your website. Here's the first paragraph. Here's the dialogue you should excerpt. I think about that stuff because I want the writer equipped to go forward so that no matter what they do, next steps, they at least get a sense that they didn't just throw several $100 to $1,000 away just to have somebody tell them, like, oh, well, you've got a ton of problems. My goal is to always facilitate writer's success. Now, as I said, you're going to pay for this. You get what you pay for. I used this example a couple weeks ago in a Wednesday night chat. If you had something wrong with your vehicle, now, granted, I'm not a car person, so bear with this example. But if your car was leaking something or making a weird-ass noise and it didn't quite feel right to drive, like you could do it, but it wasn't right, or the brakes squeaked, or it made like a rattle or something, and you rocked up to a garage and were like, hey, my car's doing this thing, it's a real problem. And they said, oh, sure, no problem. Instead of giving you like a flat rate and then telling you like, hey, here's what's up, this is how much it costs, this is what we're going to do to it, they would give you something sort of broad and hand-wavy vague, like, well, kind of, like, I think it's probably this, or, hey, by the way, we were looking and it's kind of like that, that kind of like weird cliche experience. That's the same kind of experience you get when somebody's like, it will cost you 0.04 of 1 penny per word. Either that person's not really interested in making a living at this job, or 2, they don't value your work enough to really make a concerted effort. So either they're not committed to doing this for your betterment, or 2, they just don't like doing it in the first place. You will get what you pay for. A good editor of any persuasion will be right out the gate with a payment plan, willing to flex within reason on a price. Because the goal isn't so much, hey, pay me $10,000 and I'm yours. The goal is, all right, you want to accomplish a thing, I want to accomplish the same thing. We need to compromise and figure out how we can both make ourselves happy. If you get an editor who's not doing that, walk away. And if you're embarrassed about, like, I can't afford, like, believe me, it's an awkward conversation. I have to have that conversation with creditors 3 to 4 times a week. It's real awkward. It's real messy to have to say, like, I can't buy bread this week. So, like, you can spot me for a bag of bread. I get it. It's awkward as hell. Be brave. Remember your goal. You want your book on the shelf. You want to have that sense of accomplishment. I would rather work with somebody who is able to feed themselves and produce their art than somebody who has elected to, skip breakfast and dinner for 6 weeks to pay me what I'm going to be done with in a weekend that you're going to live with for 6 weeks to, get through. I would rather work out a compromise, but that's me. It is again, one of those things that generates a lot of ire and enmity from others, but it's legit. I am as flexible as I can be with pricing. I should point out that if you're a previous client, if you're a regular subscriber to my stuff. If you've worked with me in the past, if you are a frequent stream person or you come hang out in Discord or whatever, I will do whatever I can to work with whatever budget you have. You just got to be honest with me so I know. That's a thing I wish more editors did. Because, yeah, this will cost you money. I am, especially now, really wondering, like, if your editorial price tag is under $300, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. Either the work you're getting is subpar, or the scheduling is off, or whatever. It should be more than that. Just based on the amount of stuff to do. You want like 160,000 words? I mean, let's just do some quick cursory math, right? 160,000 words at a penny is still 1,600 words. At half a penny, it's, 800 or so. It's scalar. That's really important. You're going to get what you pay for. And you're going to get what you pay for relative to your contract. And if you talk to an editor who doesn't have a contract, run away. Just don't work without a contract. Some contracts are better than others. My current contract is better than my old one. And yeah, you can wiggle on it to some degree, but understand that the more you wiggle on it, the more frustration is going to build up on either side. So there's maybe some flexibility for everybody to compromise. But by and large, get a contract. Spell out what everybody's doing for whatever price. And if you get into things and you got to make some new decisions, have a different discussion. Your end goal here should be to produce the best work possible. And the editor is going to help you do that by working with the words you have, suggesting words you need, eliminating words you don't need, to overall help you funnel that creative effort towards a single goal. Putting a movie in the reader's head. That's what an editor does. Questions about literally any part of this? Or was there something I didn't cover? I'm also assuming that like the audio was good and that nobody had like any sort of technical issues. No one seemed to say anything, so I'm assuming it went smoothly. You enjoyed tonight. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed tonight. That was important to me. Yeah, Twitch has been weird apparently. A really common issue people have been having is it gets all weird and robot-y with the audio, like the audio freaks out. It seems fine on this end, but cool, the audio was good. I'm so glad. It seems to have dramatically improved once I switched from one piece of shit software to better stuff. Yes, Twitch has been twitchy. It really does seem everything got a lot easier when I moved from slobs to OBS. And yes, I'm aware that several of you have been on me to do that since the beginning, and I'm sorry I was resistant, but here I am in the end all the same. Other questions, issues, comments, etc. Where was that new person? I want to make sure they did okay. Is James still here? I can't tell. It does not seem so. Bummer. I hope they did okay, though. I hope they had an all right time. If you liked this, by the way, if this was totally like what you're looking for on your Monday evening, something technical, something a little heavy, by all means, feel free to follow if you're not already. It's free. Or subscribe if you like it and you want to encourage more stuff like this. Also, you will buy my cats food, which is always appreciated because they keep demanding food. if you want to support all the stuff I do, the best thing you can do is go check out the Patreon, patreon.com/John helps you create, or the command !Patreon will give you the link, because I made that work too. Yay. If you're totally new, I'm here Mondays and Wednesdays. Monday is sort of a general technical thing. Like, we're going to talk about what an editor does. Next week, we're going to talk about MPOV and MARC and MBP. Whereas Wednesday night is the Wednesday night writers chat. A large 2-hour Q&A where you can come and ask me literally any question you want about literally anything and any part of writing or publishing or editing or querying or marketing or who knows what. And I will do my best to answer you. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I think that is everything I have on my notepad. That is everything I got. You guys good? Questions? Issues? Complaints? No? Yes? Huh. All right. I think that's it, guys. So the next time I will see you... No, calendar. The next time I will see you is Wednesday of this week. That is December. Oh my God, it's December. December the 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here. How delightful. Oh my God. I'm so glad you had a good time, person. Thank you for being here. You know, I thought it was going to be like a real pain in the ass to have like a little note saying, first time chat. You know what? Welcome. Thanks for being first. I appreciate the courage of you leaving comments. Cool. Thanks for being here. I hope you come back. Hope you ask questions. I am, of course. Would you like plugs? Should I just do a plug? Let's do a plug. Where's my plug buttons?
The Wednesday Writers Chat is powered by Patreon supporters. For more information, check out patreon.com/John helps you create.
Yay, plugs. All right. Should we get out of here? Let's get out of here. Have a good night. I will see you guys on Wednesday. I look forward to your questions. I look forward to seeing you again. If you want to follow up with this one, it'll go on YouTube tomorrow. And 2, you can always jump on the Discord and ask more questions. That's where I'll be for the next 15, 20 minutes. So do have a good night. I will see you guys very, very soon. See ya.